travelling through Cork, where the road takes me on C103.
Good evening and welcome to Where the Road Takes Me. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday evening. In March of 1846, a Captain J. Wolfe of the Royal Navy suggested in a letter to the appropriate authorities in this country that lighthouses be built on the Bull Rock and the Galley Head in West Cork and on the Foes Rocks off the Blasket Islands in County Kerry. Only one of his proposals was approved. The Galley Head got the go-ahead. Plans for the other two were shelved. However, and disregarding local advice, it was decided to build a lighthouse instead on the Calf Rock, just off Dursey Island on the Beara Peninsula. Henry Grissel completed the tower there in August of 1864. In 1865, the lantern, optic and revolving machinery were installed, and in June of 1866, the first light was established. The tower was 121 feet high now, and the light itself sat 136 feet above high water. The decision to locate a lighthouse on the Calf Rock would eventually prove to be a fatal one and a foolish one. A severe storm in 1869 washed away a section of the lighthouse. The keeper survived, but 6 boatmen who rowed out to the rock to check on the keeper's welfare lost their lives when their boat overturned in stormy seas. 12 years later, and on the night of the 27th of November, 1881, 6 men were stationed on the Calf Rock. There were 3 lightkeepers: head keeper Thomas Fortune from Wexford, an Englishman named John Young, and Johnny Harrington from Dursey Island. Also on the rock that night were 3 workmen who were repairing the landing site there: John Byrne from Dublin, a young local lad named Lowney, and Mick Kelly from Ballochbuie, a man whose story will form a major part of this evening's programme. On that night, as some of the men remained on watch and others settled down to sleep, a severe storm was brewing from the northwest, and the Calf Rock was directly in its path. Just before 4 a.m. on the Sunday morning of November 27, 1881, a gigantic wave crashed over the lighthouse, taking with it the top part of the tower, along with the lantern and machinery. And so began a sequence of events involving survival, bravery, exceptional seamanship, and an ending to this story that comes under the heading of Strange but True. Recently, the descendants of Mick Kelly, along with the descendants of the rescuers and rescued of the Calf Rock disaster, got together under the banner of the Kelly Clan Gathering and as part of the Gathering Festival. I travelled to the tip of the Beara Peninsula, hoping to find out more about the rescue, but especially to hear why Mick Kelly smoked a clay pipe at his own wake. The famous Mick Kelly is Donal Kelly's grandfather. Donal is chairman of the Kelly Clan Gathering Committee. Now, while a lot of hard work went into organising this gathering, Donal says some of it actually happened by accident.
It all started one night inside in Toomey's Bar in Castletownbere. There was a bit of a family gathering there, and 2 nieces, Anne-Marie Kennedy and Marie Kelly, we decided that we'd go for the gathering team for 2013, and we'd go for the Kelly Clan Gathering. And the minute I saw the application that those 2 ladies put together, I knew we were on a winner, and we got funding from the gathering, and that's how it all began.
Teddy Black is a local historian in Shanachie and has researched this amazing story extensively. Even going back to the initial and fatal disaster of 1869, there are some strange stories emerging.
But I was talking to Dursey man only a few weeks ago. I was doing a scurry thing on Dursey Island, and the man said that it was kind of in their folklore that some older people had seen a boat go towards the calf earlier in the day, and there was no such boat, and yet the boat went out. They lost sight of it in a big shower, and when the shower lifted, the boat had already overturned at the rock, and everybody was lost on that. And it was a widow then of Philip Conroy was his name, one of the men that was lost that time. His wife, she married Mick Kelly. Mary, she married Mick Kelly, so obviously she didn't want him going on that rock in October that year of 81.
Yeah, I've been trying to imagine what it must have been like for her sitting in that house that day, the wake. It seemed to her second husband had been drowned as well, and then to see him walking in.
Well, I tried to cover it as good as I could and how I would imagine it, just like yourself, and I reckon there would have been such a joy. You can imagine. She had 6 children. I mean, she pleaded with him not to go. She said she had a terrible feeling about this, But I suppose if you consider it, John, it was the 1800s. They didn't have, these men. He had 6 children. They had to be fed. He had worked in the mines. He had worked as a fishing. That's just Mick Kelly now. Yeah. And the other men was William Lowney. There was John Harrington, who would have been a direct descendant of, or Gerdy Harrington would be a direct descendant of his. Now, the extraordinary thing about that is the 3 lightkeepers on the Calf Rock, they all had to have seamen's qualifications because it was so dangerous there. Both that rock and the Fastnet, they had to be fully fledged seamen before they could go. So that Francis Fortune, Thomas Francis Fortune, he would have had great experience. John Harrington, he was a Dursley man. He had been 12 years, I suppose, because I think he was actually on some of the building of the rockets or the building of the lighthouse as well. So he had huge experience about the calf. And then you had a John Young who'd come off the Princess Alexandria. She was a ship owned by the Irish Lights, and he had joined, a Duggan man. Then John Duggan, he was another lightkeeper who had a lot of experience too. There was an awful lot of experience, and I suppose people had pleaded, as you know, with the first aboard the ballast in Trinity House, not to build on that rock, including the Coast Guard apparently and the naval people. They all sort of said it would be a very dangerous place to build it. They had lost dwellings while they were building the lighthouse. They had been washed away, so it was really a dangerous and risky place. The Bull Rock was the one that was suggested, and eventually it was built on the Bull Rock, and there was nobody lost on that. So it's quite an extraordinary thing that local advice and local knowledge sometimes can be extremely important.
Researching the Kelly family tree was the work of Maria Kelly and Anne-Marie Kennedy, both great-granddaughters of Mick Kelly. Maria says that delving into his background was very interesting and enjoyable.
He was born in Carrackeem in Iries in 1845, and he married into the house here in Ballochboy. He married Mary Conroy. She had previously been married to Philip Conroy. He was drowned at the Calf Rock in 1869. He married her and they had 6 children together. Mary died suddenly in 1883, and they had 6 children and they were very young, and we understand Mary's sister came back from Butte, Montana, and the 6 children went to live with her in Butte with her family. So we researched then trying to find, could we find any of the children, because none of us wouldn't have known anything about them. So we found information on 3 of the children who went to Butte in 1884. Mick had then remarried Kate Owen Sullivan from Glenora, went on to have 9 children with her, and one of them would have been my grandfather, Morris Kelly.
About 3 o'clock in the morning, the light and the tower was blown off the rock. They were very, very lucky to escape to one of the low buildings on the rock that was being washed over as well. The story is dramatic, really, because they were on the rock for 14 days. It was 4 or 5 days before the people in the mainland discovered that they were still okay, and at that time they didn't know were they all okay or what was the story. But they slowly but surely got the information. The British Navy ship, the Seahorse, tried unsuccessfully to take him off 3 or 4 times.
Donald Kelly, chairman of the Kelly Clan Gathering Committee. On December 2nd, 1881, after several attempts by Navy gunboats failed to reach the men, the captain of a seine fishing boat on Dursey Island, 53 years old Michael O'Shea, gathered his 6-man crew and rowed out to the Calf Rock in an attempt to get supplies to the men and rescue them. Donald Kelly says it was an amazing feat of seamanship.
It was unbelievable what he undertook, and of course a good seaman is no good without a good crew, and they were all from the same village on the island. Shea had his son, and the Healy man had his son as well, so there was two fathers and two sons on the boat, and three others. And I mean, if that went wrong, it would have been a total disaster altogether, but thankfully everything worked out fine. And in the first few days of it, everybody in the mainland thought that the 6 men were gone, because they looked out and the tower of the lighthouse was totally wiped out.
Anne Kelly and Anne-Marie Kennedy are granddaughter and great-granddaughter of Mick Kelly, one of the men rescued from the lighthouse in 1881. Anne-Marie says we can only imagine what Mick's wife Mary was going through at home. She had already lost her first husband Philip at the Calf Rock in 1869, and now it looked as if the tragedy was about to strike for the second time.
Was she going to be widowed again with six children? So you can imagine that they were planning a wake, and they thought, like, that time you didn't survive a thing like that, and there was no sign of life for a couple, I suppose, for a couple of days. So it's great to honour our roots and our heritage and where we came from, and it's also good to recognise the people that rescued them, because only for them we wouldn't be all having a gathering here today.
I was only saying earlier about the beautiful view that's here.
That's it.
Not just this evening, but every day, regardless of weather conditions.
Yeah.
But the sea on that occasion, the wind, the storm must have been just unbelievable.
Like, I mean, if I've been fortunate to actually get out to the Calf Rock. My life ambition is to actually get on the Calf Rock, but it's very hard with tides and currents and all that. But like, when you're out there, like, even how they physically got on the rock, there's actually steps cut onto the rock. How even get on there in the winter time, they were putting their life in danger going out there in good weather, let alone bad weather. So, like, I mean, and it's fairly high up. You can see it from the land. So the waves must have been enormous to actually break them. But the locals told them not to build their lighthouse there, and they still thought that they knew better and their technology was ahead of that. So, but it came to pass that it didn't, and they ended up building a new lighthouse in the Bull Rock.
So the moral of the story is, don't go against nature and don't go against local knowledge.
Yeah.
And I suppose, Anne, it was a story you grew up.
Absolutely. But we didn't look around at the scenery at all. We hadn't time. We just went to school barefoot. We never looked out at that thing. We hadn't time.
In the first few days of it, everybody in the mainland thought that the 6 men were gone, because they looked out and the tower of the lighthouse was totally wiped out. And the wake for my grandfather was going on in his house down in Blockby. And the weird thing about that was that he was a widower, and he married a widow, and her previous husband, her first husband, was actually drowned on the Calf Rock. And the poor woman was lamented that lightning surely wouldn't strike twice. Thanks be to God, the fact that we're here today, it didn't.
Your grandfather was one of the workmen that was on the Calf Rock.
That's right. He was a stonemason. They were unbelievable people, the whole lot of them. But imagine in today's terms, to carry out that rescue with 6 oars and an open boat and a rope was unbelievable.
Have we any idea? I'm sure we have, or you have, how severe the storm was.
The storm was unbelievable. I mean, to take the top of the lighthouse, that was a gigantic wave, and one wave did it. It went on one wave. They were absolutely terrified, as you can imagine. The water came down in through the remainder of the tower then, but there was little buildings away from the tower, and they were down low and built into crevices in the rock, and they made a run for that. But that was terrifying, because they had to go over all the rubble of the tower, and they got to the kitchen, and they were in the kitchen for the 14 days.
What led the people on shore to believe that he had been drowned was items of his clothes were found at the shore, was it?
That's right. There was some of his clothing washed ashore, and the wake was actually going on in the house, and they were smoking clay pipes and drinking whiskey and whatever wakes were done at the time. And there was no mobile phone or email or anything. They actually didn't know that the boat left from Dursey. And long and the short of it, he walked into his own wake, and they were all extremely happy, as you can imagine, as well as the relatives of the other 5 people. But Mick Kelly walking into his own wake was pretty unique.
I'm in Dursey on the Beara Peninsula this evening for the Kelly Clan gathering and the amazing story of the Calf Rock Lighthouse rescue of 1881 and the man who smoked a clay pipe at his own wake. There's loads more of this in part 2 of Where the Road Takes Me shortly.
Where the Road Takes Me with John Greene on C103 Cork. C103.
We return with part 2 of Where the Road Takes Me. Welcome back. I'm in Beara this evening for the Kelly Clan reunion, which also commemorates the Calf Rock Lighthouse rescue, which happened in November 1881. For a number of days back then, it was thought that the men had actually lost their lives on the rock, but all 6 were courageously rescued by Mick O'Shea, a seine boat fisherman, and his crew from Dursey Island. Mick Kelly was one of those rescued, and when he arrived back home, he discovered that his own wake was taking place. James Sheehan remembers Mick Kelly when he himself was but a young boy.
I was 5 years old when Mick Kelly died.
All right.
And Donald's sister, Mary, she was one age from me. We were born the same month. And I suppose, I was a young fella running around there. And I remember Mick Kelly sitting inside the fire, a big hat, and a red knitted cap on him. An old man, but I'm an old man now too.
Was he a big man?
Hey, Jesus, he was as big as Donald, I suppose, but not as roughly built. Like I'd say he was a thinner man. Yeah.
And it's not too many people can say that they walked in on their own funeral or wake.
No. They thought they were all dead. But it didn't happen. They didn't know they were going to take him off. They had no connection.
No phones or anything?
No
those
phones or nothing, no. The only thing was there was the old semaphore. That was the only thing. That's how they were connecting in the bull rock.
And the storm that night, James, was pretty bad, wasn't it?
Well, oh Lord God, it was awful. It was awful. But it was a house that was cut into the rock, and there was steel door in it, and they got in there, and that saved them. And I reckon, I hope you'll go around it, for I'd say that steel door is there always. Yeah, I was up in it some years ago, between you and an awful calm day.
Conditions must have been very bad for them for the 12 days that they were there.
Oh, Christ, awful. And it is not a high rock,
Jim Kelly is another one of Mick Kelly's grandsons. Jim grew up here, but now lives in Donegal. He's been catching up gradually with the story and facts of the rescue over the past few years.
But I hadn't all the details as I have them now. I read all the bits in the London Times, and I didn't know about them before.
I presume it was a story that back then was making news all over the place.
It was, yeah, from the London Times broadcast, an article on it every day, up to date. And there was no up-to-date reporting like there is now. You had no mobile phones, or telephone system would be very poor as well that time. They still prioritised it anyway.
Very interesting story about your grandfather, of course.
It was, yes. I mean, the man, he was born in 1845 into the middle of the famine, so he must have had a colourful upbringing and life,
So how did you end up in Donegal from here?
I worked for the Department of Agriculture, and a colleague of mine had pneumonia in 1964 in Letterkenny. I was sent up to do his work for 3 months, and I'm 50 years old now.
And do you get back here very often?
Every summer, yeah.
And the scenery?
It's much the same.
Is much the same.
That's right. Sea and hills and fields, and the one thing they have more than us is fantastic beaches, of course. They really have, and golf courses. When I landed in Donegal, a couple of boys came around and asked me would I like to go for a game of golf. The very first day I landed, they might as well have mentioned cricket just as handy as golf. Yeah, that's what it was, and got hooked. It's great to see all the family and extended family coming from America and all over. It took something apart from God forgive a funeral to bring everybody together. Usually it's something tragic that brings them together,
but on this occasion it's a joyous occasion.
It's a joyous occasion, yeah, it is.
I come down here every year since I was born on holidays. My mum always, even though she moved and lived in Limerick and married my dad, we were always brought down here on holidays. So we were always given a very strong sense of our heritage and where we came from and our roots. So as a result of, I always came down here every year on my holidays, and I still come down here, and there's no place like it on earth. So we were always told the story of Mick Kelly and the Calf Rock, but there was never any monument to it, and locals still talked about Mick Kelly and about the Calf Rock and how they were great, and I kind of got interested in it, and I looked it up. And in 1881 in the Irish Times at the time, there was articles nearly every day about how were they going to rescue these unfortunate men from the Calf Rock, and there was all manner of means of suggestions about various equipment as to how they were going to do it. But in the end, it took local men with local knowledge of the tides and the currents to actually rescue the men on the Calf Rock. And like, the more you hear the story about it, how they survived for 4 days standing on a table with the waves crashing in under them, and they having a fire lit in a galvanised bucket, and that was their only method of heat and heating water. So like, it's a brave testament to survival, and it's something I think we can all draw on when we're going through bad times, that, you know, my great-grandfather, her grandfather survived the Calf Rock and survived, you know, kept alive, kept fighting.
Anne-Marie Kennedy. Well, when the men reviewed the damage to the lighthouse, they decided to make the hazardous journey across rubble and rocks to the kitchen, which they felt would be safest. They remained there for 12 days until their rescue. Conditions here were very poor, says Donal Kelly, who also describes how exactly his grandfather and colleagues were rescued.
Very, very bad. Like, it was a small little room, and the six of them were there. You know, I suppose it was trying to get the message ashore that they were still okay, and then when the message did get ashore, the people ashore didn't know was there one alive or six alive, you know. And when she got there with the boat, then they left a line off the rock, and it floated out, and they picked it up, and they pulled a strong rope ashore then and secured it on the rock, and they kept the boat with the tide and kept the rope tight, and they went out along the rope. My grandfather, I believe, was the first off, and Fortune, the lightkeeper, was the last.
He was from Wexford, I think, was he?
He was from Wexford, yeah.
So it was sort of hand over hand from the rocks onto the boat. Was it on this rope?
That was it, yeah. That was it. No, I presume they had a rope around them and a loop on the main rope as well, but they pulled themselves out hand over hand. That was very, very dramatic. They took them out in and put them on board the Seahorse, where they were well treated, and they got dry clothes and food, which was a big novelty to them, and the rest, as we say, is history. But we always felt as a family that it should be recognised in some way. Now the crew got medals of bravery some years after. They went to London to pick up their medals.
They got money as well, I think. Was it £25, which was a huge amount then? Yeah.
£25. That was a huge amount of money. And then coming around to the modern day now, right, when this went up on Facebook first that this was happening, lo and behold, the response from the relatives of the crew that saved them was unbelievable. Like, they were back straight away. So at Mick Kelly's home place, the plaque will be unveiled to the memory of, first of all, to the brave crew that rescued them, and the 6 men that they rescued.
Calf Rock was an extremely dangerous place to gain access to and work on. As mentioned previously, and against all advice to the contrary, a lighthouse was still built here. 2 disasters were required before the lighthouse was eventually relocated to its neighbour, the Bull Rock. At the Kelly clan reunion, the story of the Calf Rock rescue is being told by historian and Shanachie Teddy Black.
Henry Grizzle, or Grizel, whichever way you'd want to pronounce the name, he was the engineer, and it was quite incredible that it cost twice as much as the original quotation to build the lighthouse. And they had been speaking about it since 1854. It was 1860 before it really got underway, and 1866 before the first light came on, and it only lasted 3 years before the first major damage. So, I mean, can you imagine the fear it was meant the night it collapsed? Like?
Yeah, I mean, you have 3 stories here. You have the survival on the rock, you have Mick Kelly walking in on his own wake, and then we mustn't forget those brave men who made 2 trips out to the Calf Rock in atrocious conditions and in a very small boat.
Well, Michael O'Shea, I mean, he's known as Mike of the Medals. I think this is one of the things I feel grateful this weekend to be able to stand up and talk about. The whole group of people that were even in his boat, you know, there was a Sullivan Bruhel in the boat, there was Healy's, you know, it was a Dudley man. So, I mean, they were all fantastic people. You know, I haven't, you know, I know the people now by memory, but I mean, their names are there and their names are remembered with great pride, really. There was Healy's as well on the all areas. There was 2 following boats, as you know, 2 smaller boats, and you had the main seine boat. But this Michael O'Shea, I mean, just to strip off to the waist the way he did and brought those men into the boat that day. Captain his name is Gravener or Gravner. He would have been on the Seahorse, which was a military. It would have been out from Bearhaven, it was a steam tug, and he actually gave the men money out of his own resource. He was so impressed with their bravery. The men, they were all Dursey men, and these were the people who had been warning. I know Michael O'Shea was working for the Irish Lights, but even after that he saved another man before he died, you know. So he was known as Mike of the Medals.
Yeah, and he went to London. Yeah, I think he died of pneumonia.
That's right. He went to London to get his medals. John, I could talk about this for hours, but I suppose the way it is tonight is you're probably trying to talk to mainly the people who are relatives and you know, the families of these very brave and courageous people. And honestly, I'm delighted to meet you here because you're a Bear man yourself, but I'm so grateful. My grandfather came to the Dursey Sound. That was the first place he came to look after paint the station there, and that's how my father met my mother in Castletown. So my grandmother kept these lightkeepers as well, so it's a big history.
Joe Kelly now lives in Glounthaune, but was born and grew up here. We're standing right outside Lehan Moore Community Centre, which was once upon a time, as Joe tells me, his school, or academy as he refers to it.
Got my first degrees here.
And you walked, obviously, to school and back here?
3 miles morning evening. Yeah. And I came for a while in between. Very happy days, yeah.
We've been talking quite a lot, obviously, about the Calf Rock here this evening.
Yes.
But your grandfather, Mick Kelly, you remember him?
I remember him, yeah. I remember especially his funeral, you know. And those days, they used to have a big party in the funeral. They'd have teas, etc. But then they got knives and forks and bread. And I remember I burned all the knives. There was every handle something in the fire. Big days. That was my memories of the funeral.
Yeah. And that was his real funeral, not the one he walked in on.
No, he didn't come back from this one.
He didn't come back from this one, no. It's a very special weekend, isn't it?
Oh, of course, the family, yeah. There's a big family. And, you know, we're all united. We all stuck together, you know. We're all good friends.
Great to come back here now and meet all the gang.
It is, yeah. We always kept in communication, you know.
Yeah.
Well, this is school here. There was one thing with a very good teacher, John L. Sullivan. To me, he was one. He was alive in the business, but he really taught us the facts of life and the business sense. He was superb.
Not just the books, but the college of life as well.
Oh yes, well he believed in that in a big way, like, you know, and he always believed in exercise and games and football and so on.
What type of man was Mick Kelly? Was he a big man?
No, he was not too big, but very well built.
Strong man.
He had a neck nose, you name it, and 2 hands like shovels, like, you know. But he was a very generous man, but strong, but very determined. If he says something, that's that. Must be done.
Coming up in part 3, James Sheehan talks about his days as cable car operator to Dursey Island, and emigration and the luxury of flush toilets and electricity in America. Let's rejoin after the break.
travelling through Cork, where the road takes me on C103 with John Greene on C103 Cork.
Final part of Where the Road Takes Me coming right up. Welcome back. I'm in Leigh-on-More on the tip of the Beara Peninsula, and we're looking back at the Calf Rock rescue of November 1881. Well, 90% of the people I'm with at the moment are Kellys, simply because the Kelly clan reunion has just started. One person who is not a Kelly, obviously, is James Sheehan, who spoke to us earlier about his memories of Mick Kelly. Well, when the cable car to Jersey Island started here in 1970, James was its first operator.
I'm retired now 20 years. And 20 years I'm the pension, like, I don't know. They mightn't be giving me a lot more.
Hopefully they will, yeah. Hopefully they will.
Yeah, I'd say that, yeah.
Yeah. How did you enjoy your time as cable car operator?
Good enough. Ups and downs, yeah. Met a lot of nice people.
People from all over the world.
People from all over the world. Holland, all over. Germany, a lot of Germans, Yanks, a lot of nice people.
And do you remember the first day that it opened?
I do, good. I do. A bad day too. It was a bad day. Jack Lynch, yeah.
Was it Jack opened it?
Jack opened it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And travelled on it.
And travelled on it. I went to it over the first tourist stop and Jack on it. And yeah, something happened anyway. They're all relays of one thing or another. I can't be explaining, but something happened anyway. There's a bit of a battery in it, and I got it going. But I'm going to tell you one thing. It was a troublesome affair, bit of machinery, because nobody knew anything about it.
At that time, yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
But there was a fellow came down from the county hall. One time he was doing the lift in the county hall, and he knew all about it. And there was an engineer by the Henry Roach came there, and he knew too.
When the cable car started then, it meant a lot to the people on the island.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
A whole lot. Oh, God, it did. A whole lot. Made their life much a lot easier.
And when you were growing up here, there was a lot of people on the island then?
When I was growing up here, a young fella, I'd say there were 300 people. I remember Christmas Day, and we'd be going to Mass with our horse and cart. There'd be gangs of them passing.
And then I meet Johnny Kelly, who's back from Boston for the get-together or reunion. His uncle, Donald Kelly, joins us as well. Because of immigration, Donald didn't meet his brother, Johnny's father, for the first time until he was 21.
So, Johnny, you're home from Boston, or you're back from Boston.
No. Actually, that's the way. That is the way it's said often enough. I'm home from Boston.
You're home from Boston, yeah, for what promises to be, and I'm sure it will be, a great weekend.
It'll be a fantastic weekend. It always is over here.
Yeah.
The event is just a little bit of icing on the cake. You get together with the people down here. You haven't seen them in years, like you've never been away.
It's an amazing story, of course. The rescue, and of course, what would be your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather, yeah. Mick Kelly.
Yeah. Not many people walk in their own wakes.
Now, that's not going to happen every day. But in this family, I'm not surprised at it too much, to tell you the truth.
Have you been telling this story to people in Boston?
They wouldn't quite grasp it, but we give them the shorter version of the story. Mm-hmm. And just tell them how Mick was out there for 7 days, surviving as best they could, eating the seagulls out of the water if they had to. That would be about the best story we give.
Now, Donald, you're Johnny's uncle.
That's right.
And tell me about his father again, your brother. You didn't meet him until you were 21.
That's correct. I was 21 years old before John was gone to the States before I was born. And it was 21 years before he got home, and that was real immigration, I think, because he couldn't come up. And he did tell me when he was in America first, he really didn't like it, but they had to stick it out and stay there. And the world was a massive big place at that time. And I think in today's terms, we have him here from Australia. My own son is here from Australia. He was home at Christmas time as well, and he was home 3 times in the last year. And John was 21 years before he got home. And the day he walked on the plank in Cove going to the States, my father turned around to my mother and said, "That's the last one of them that'll leave." And it was. The other 8 of us are in Ireland. And immigration was severe at the time. But this fella here keeps the connection up, and all his family really. And my oldest sister Mary was gone to America before I was 13, before she and I met. That was the times at that time.
Won't you tell me, son, what county man are you? I thought you might be Mayo, but now I'm not so sure. I've been over here a long time on my own, and it's really nice to meet someone from home. Oh, tell me now, how's Dublin city fair? It's such a long, long time since I was there. And how are sweet Fermanagh and Tyrone. Oh, it's really nice to meet someone from home. Could you spare me just a minute of your time? I seldom meet someone from home. Oh, won't you stay a while? I've been over here a long time on my own, and it's really nice to meet someone from home. Tells me that you're from the West. Those Connemara hills, they are the best. From Galway up onto the Sligo shore, it's really nice to meet someone from home. Could you spare me just a minute of your time? I seldom meet someone from home. Oh, won't you stay a while? I've been over here a long time on my own, and it's really nice to meet someone from home. I've been over here a long time on my own, and it's really nice to meet someone from home.
Very sad occasion, obviously, when he was leaving. But what about when he came back then? Can you remember that?
Well, when he came back, everybody that came home from the States, when they'd meet me, they'd say, "You're the image of your brother John." No, we were like twins, the oldest, and I'm the baby. We were very, very close.
Why are you laughing?
Some baby.
He's like baby hero.
Sorry, darling.
So, I suppose, compare it to today, the world is very, very small now. And it's so fantastic to have his family here now for this.
And when you were growing up, Johnny, was your dad talking about this story?
Not so much of this story. We have a lot of the stories of he had a horse that he loved over here. And he would give me the stories about the horse and the nights that they would spend going over to Iri's. It sounded brilliant. The way he would give me the story is they would go over the hill, over to Iri's, and they would pull the shoes off. They would go over the hill in bare feet. They don't want to get the shoes dirty for the dancing that night.
Yeah, press the girls.
Yeah. And, he didn't have to do much. It follows in the family like. It was more to save the soles of the shoes.
I know that. Yeah. And over in Boston at the moment, it's completely different to what it was when your dad went over there. Of course.
Oh, gee, different. Dad would have come into New York. He spent a good 2 years in New York learning a trade, which is it was very difficult. But thank God that there were other Irish here to welcome them and show them the way. Gave my father the trade of carpentry. He took that to the extent that he had a thriving business as a housing developer. I remember I would work for him, and I was always amazed at how many things he could do. He could build the whole house. The plumbing, the electricity, putting up all the framing and everything. Mm-hmm. Especially when I come back now and I go down here and I see where he came from, and to see what he accomplished coming over at such a young age. It's a proud feeling.
And going back to what you were saying earlier on, Donald, about immigrating in those days. I mean, 5 hours now, 6 hours you're over there, but then it was 3-4 weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. And he never knew there was such a thing as a flushing toilet or an electric light. Never knew it existed, and it was a real culture shock, to leave Ballackway and finish up in New York 3 weeks later. That was a real culture shock.
There wasn't any electricity at that time, was there, when he left?
Oh no, we didn't get electricity in the home place until 1969 when the cable car went to Durgell, and that's when we got rural electrification. Yeah. We were, I'd say, the last in Ireland to get it, when we should have been the first.
That's right.
Yeah. You're none the worse off from it anyway. Finally, there's been a cameraman going around here all evening, and the last time I met Cian Murphy, we were on board the Castletown Bear lifeboat together and stuck in a gale force 10 storm.
Yeah, it was very choppy, alright. Nothing like we've seen before, but it was very choppy.
Since I've spoken to you, have you been busy? Last week?
Yeah, last weekend we'd actually 3 shouts, one every day over the weekend, so we're kept busy. I think since the last time you called down, I'd say we had about 8 to 10 shouts, I think. So from a variety of chasing Chinese lanterns, which is always an issue, to vessels hitting rocks, to towing in a fishing vessel. So wide variety there.
Are the Chinese lanterns still a problem?
A small bit around our way. When they're coming down, when they burn out, they're coming down fast, and if you looked out your window and you saw one coming down, they kind of glow a bit of a red, and the first thing you would do was call the Coast Guards, and we are launched anyway to search, which is our due diligence, and we complete a search. A search could take up to 6 hours to complete a search of the area. It just turns out to be Chinese lanterns or someone's birthday or someone's celebrating something.
So are you the official cameraman here tonight?
I don't know if it's official or unofficial, but I'm stepping in a couple of interviews, alright, and just getting a bit of video for Donald to put together for the relations that couldn't make it over for the weekend.
So when I'm introducing you, it's Cian Murphy, Kelly Clan Gathering official cameraman.
Alright, it's not a bad title. I've been given worse titles.
And that's where we leave Leigh Moore on the Beara Peninsula this evening, looking right across towards the Calf Rock that formed the major part of our story this evening. My sincere thanks to the Kelly family for taking part in the programme. Back at base, John Foot was in sound, and thank you kindly for joining us. Where the Road Takes Me returns on Sunday at 7. From me, John Greene, take care and bye for now.
Join us on our journey, where the road takes me, on C103.